Have you ever done a double take while watching a Marvel movie? You look at an actor and you just know that you've seen them before. It's kind of an odd experience, like deja vu. You immediately search on IMDb until the magic moment of, oh, that's where I know them from. Strangely enough, it's a very common occurrence. Evidently, once you've played one Marvel role, you can't wait to play another. So, let's dive right in. There's perhaps no actor who has had better luck with comic book roles than Chris Evans. He's been great in movies like Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and The Losers, though it's his Marvel roles that really put him into the limelight. His first experience with Marvel came in Fantastic Four. While that franchise is pretty much despised today, it was one of Evans' biggest breaks. His performance as Johnny Storm, the Human Torch, was hailed as one of the best parts of the movie. The chemistry with co-star Michael Chiklis' The Thing was a perfect recreation of their friendly rivalry in the comic books. After the sequel failed to impress, though, the Fantastic franchise collapsed. That would not be Evans' last experience with Marvel, though, by a mile. The people behind the MCU surprised everyone when they decided to cast Evans as the one and only Captain America. You can ask actors like Ben Affleck and Robert Pattinson how fans reacted to that news at first. Chris Evans surprised everyone in Captain America: The First Avenger by portraying the perfect Steve Rogers. His CGI-enhanced performance as the skinny pre-Cap Rogers was what really won fans over, though. He played the character for 8 years in some of the best comic book movies ever made. His run as the famous super soldier ended perfectly in this year's Avengers Endgame. He truly took the character to the end of the line. Ryan Reynolds has had an interesting experience with comic book movies. His first Marvel role was the very disappointing Blade Trinity. He played vampire hunter Hannibal King, who was a wise guy mercenary. His performance as the character inspired Reynolds' long journey to portray a different Marvel character. While on set, he was given a stack of Deadpool comics and told he would make a great Wade Wilson. It turns out that was both true and not true at the same time. He got the chance to first play Wade Wilson in 2009's abysmal X-Men Origins Wolverine. His performance in the first half of the movie was actually pretty great. The second half, though, not so much. Wade returns as the final bad guy of the film with his mouth burned closed and several dozen mutant powers. It is one of the most baffling, terrible moments in all of comic book film history. This incident led to Reynolds abandoning Marvel in favor of DC. He was to star in Warner Brothers' answer to Iron Man, Green Lantern. Somehow, Reynolds managed to top his legendarily awful Deadpool with an even more awful Hal Jordan. The movie was so bad that this first attempt at the DC Extended Universe died before it even began. Reynolds didn't let that stop him, though. He went back to his original plans to play Wade Wilson. But, get him right. Director Tim Miller brought him in for 2016's Deadpool, which finally did the character justice. It and its sequel, Deadpool 2, are among the most beloved comic book movies ever. Not only did Reynolds show that he and Wade Wilson are a match made in heaven, but he also made fun of his other comic book roles. There are several Green Lantern jokes in the franchise, and a literal cameo by the X-Origins version of Wade. Ryan Reynolds is the poster boy for if at first you don't succeed, try again. Peter Dinklage is most known for his role as the brilliant Tyrion Lannister in the HBO series Game of Thrones. His stardom from the series led him to portray two very different Marvel characters. Strangely enough, though, both of them share a certain skill in common. His first Marvel role was in X-Men Days of Future Past, where he portrayed Bolivar Trask. This nefarious character was the creator of the monstrous sentinels that hunted down mutants. We saw his creations destroy most of the X-Men in the distant future. His second Marvel role was much more of a surprise. He showed up in Avengers Infinity War as the dwarf Eitri. This giant character was responsible for building the Infinity Gauntlet itself. This weapon ended up bringing down even more MCU characters than his Sentinels did X-Men. In both cases, time travel was the only way to save the world from his weapons. Luckily, he also built Thor's weapons Mjolnir and Stormbreaker, so at least the guy is doing some good. Chris Evans wasn't the only Human Torch to get a second chance in the MCU. Micheal B. Jordan was a hot talent in 2015. He showed off some serious star power in movies like Fruitvale Station and Chronicle. This led him to re-team with both directors in later Marvel films, though those films are on opposite ends of Marvel film quality. His former Chronicle director Josh Trank signed on to reboot the Fantastic Four. His version of the film featured Miles Teller, Kate Mara, Jamie Bell, and of course Jordan. The movie is considered one of the all-time worst comic book films ever made. The only thing most critics liked about it at all was Jordan's portrayal as Johnny Storm. Luckily, Jordan bounced back really quickly with 2015's Creed. This film reteamed him with Ryan Coogler and showed off Jordan's intensity in a way no film had before. This led him to teaming with the director again for 2018's Black Panther. His incredibly haunted performance as Eric Killmonger is among the best villain portrayals in any comic book movie. While the actor has a lot of high-profile credits to his name, it's his performance as Killmonger that he's known for today. Luckily for him, most everyone has forgotten about that Fantastic Four debacle. Not every actor gets the best out of Marvel. Some seem to only get the fuzzy end of the lollipop. Olivia Munn is certainly one of these. Her first Marvel role was little more than a cameo. She portrayed the comic book journalist Chess Roberts very briefly in Iron Man 2. The role was so small that many just assumed that she was making a cameo as the MCU version of herself. She did play a journalist again though in the newsroom, so maybe the experience was good practice. It certainly wasn't as bad as her last Marvel job. She was featured heavily in the marketing for 2016's X-Men Apocalypse. Fans were impressed that she was one of the few X-Men characters to have a comic-accurate costume. Unfortunately, that costume was very uncomfortable. She even admitted to a serious wardrobe malfunction early on in the shoot. Not to mention the fact that she had hardly any lines in the actual film. Her fascinating comic book counterpart was relegated to a one-dimensional villain. There were rumors that she was going to appear in the sequel Dark Phoenix, but that didn't pan out. And honestly, she lucked out on that second one. Kevin Feige and Robert Downey Jr. tend to get most of the credit for making the MCU what it is today. While they certainly did their parts, and then some, one person doesn't get nearly enough credit. Jon Favreau might be more famous for Disney projects like The Jungle Book and The Lion King these days, but what really made him an A-list director was his work on the first Iron Man. That wasn't his first job with Marvel though, although we might want you to think that it was. 2003's Daredevil is one of the worst comic book movies out there, though the extended version is considerably better. It was Ben Affleck's first unfortunate superhero job, but he wasn't the only star who would go on to do more superhero work. Favreau starred alongside Affleck as Foggy Nelson, and you may have forgotten that considering it was mostly played for laughs. Unlike Charlie Cox and Eldon Henson's take on the characters, Favreau and Affleck lacked any real chemistry. That's okay though, because he would go on to a much better Marvel family. Not only did he direct the first two Iron Man movies, he also had a starring role. He played Tony's bodyguard and buddy Happy Hogan. The role continued on after that through Iron Man 3, Spider-Man Homecoming, and even into Avengers Endgame. He's even going to be making an appearance in this year's Spider-Man Far From Home. Favreau has had quite a lucky break with Marvel so far. Maybe after playing characters named Foggy and Happy, one day they'll let him play someone who doesn't have a ridiculous name. Kenneth Choi isn't a name that you may know off the top of your head. If you saw a picture of him though, you'd probably recognize him, though you may not know where from. He's had several great supporting roles in things like American Crime Story, The People vs. O.J. Simpson, and The Wolf of Wall Street. He's also played quite a few characters in the MCU. In Captain America: The First Avenger, Steve Rogers recruited a special squadron of soldiers. The Howling Commandos was a cool group of diverse World War II heroes. Choi portrayed one of the commandos named Jim Morita. While his part was relatively small in that movie, he did get to reappear as the character. In Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., there was a brief cameo by Agent Carter and the Howling Commandos. Jim Morita showed up alongside Neil McDonough's Dum Dum Dugan. It seems like this will be the last time we see the Commandos though. While Jim Morita's time in the MCU appears to be up, Choi still has more to do. MCU fans were kinda weirded out when Choi appeared as the principal in Spider-Man Homecoming. They thought it was something of a continuity error. That is, until eagle-eyed fans saw a portrait of Jim Morita in the principal's office. It's been confirmed that Principal Morita is related to Jim. It's not yet known if he's going to appear in Far From Home, though there are several Spidey films probably on the way. Morita probably has a few more appearances yet to go. Luke Cage got cancelled in an untimely manner, but it did leave its mark on the MCU as a whole. Most notably, it's the property that broke continuity the most. For starters, the show references President Barack Obama. And that's all well and good except for the fact that the MCU president at the time was Matthew Ellis. The other big continuity break concerns the brilliant character actress Alfre Woodard. Woodard portrayed the brilliant villain Mariah Dillard for 2 years. She was basically Luke Cage's very own personal kingpin. Her character may have been one of the best parts of the show, but it also broke MCU continuity. The same year Luke Cage premiered, Woodard played a different character in Captain America: Civil War. She was the mother of a kid who died in Sokovia. Her speech to Tony Stark blaming him for her son's death was what inspired Tony to support the Sokovia Accords. This is a pretty big break in continuity. There are only 2 possible explanations that work here. The first one is that Mariah Dillard was actually posing as the mother to incite Tony Stark to go for the Accords. This would mean that she was a secret partner of the evil Zemo. It would also mean that she was just as much a part of destroying the Avengers. Maybe for revenge for what the Hulk did in Harlem in The Incredible Hulk. Maybe she held a stigma against enhanced individuals after the Battle of New York. The more plausible explanation is that they were separate characters that just look a lot alike. We all gotta be honest, that's not nearly as much fun though, right? The Punisher has had a pretty rough ride with Marvel over the years. His first movie starring Dolph Lundgren was pretty terrible. The second one with Thomas Jane wasn't much better, though Jane was a pretty good Punisher. He got a really great TV show on Netflix, but got cancelled along with the show's originator Daredevil. For many though, the best on-screen Punisher is perhaps the least talked about. Punisher Warzone is a really ridiculous Marvel movie in the best way possible. It fully embraces the Marvel Max days of over-the-top violent spectacle. The film features Ray Stevens as Frank Castle. His version of the character is perhaps the least subtle. While others focus on character development, trauma, and philosophical debates on vigilantism, his is just violent. There's no subtext in Warzone. There are only bullets, bullets, and more bullets. That movie may not have made waves with many filmgoers, but it wasn't Stevenson's last trip to the Marvel world. He got to join the MCU proper in the first Thor. There, he is barely recognizable under pounds of makeup and hair as Thor's buddy Volstagg. That character ended up being little more than a punchline. He was even taken out pretty early on in Thor Ragnarok. Though his character was ended prematurely, it doesn't seem like he was forgotten. Thor's heavier appearance and long braided hair seem to be a reference to his long-lost friend. Volstagg may be gone, but his large appetite and bushy beard won't easily be forgotten. If there's one guy who has a lot to thank for Marvel for the last few years, it's Josh Brolin. While he very publicly lost out on a chance to play Batman to Ben Affleck, it's safe to say that he won out on that one in the end. Brolin will probably always be known for his role as the villainous Thanos. While his first appearance as Thanos was in the Guardians of the Galaxy, that wasn't where he really got going. Avengers Infinity War was the proper introduction to the character. Infinity War was arguably more Thanos' story than the Avengers. His journey to collect all the Infinity Stones and destroy half the universe was truly iconic, especially because he won in the end. Wiping out half the population of the universe is more than Darth Vader or Voldemort can say they've done. He was somehow even more threatening in Avengers Endgame. Even without the Infinity Stones, he managed to take on the entire Marvel Universe and nearly won. Tony Stark managed to steal the stones from him just as he was about to destroy the entire universe. It really came down to the wire. If that wasn't enough, Brolin also had an iconic turn as Deadpool's greatest frenemy, Cable. He was a perfect adaptation of the grizzled mutant warrior from the future. There was even a Thanos joke thrown in there for good measure. Hopefully, there will be more Thanos and Cable in the days to come. Since Thanos got dusted and Cable's company got bought, that's all in Disney's hands now. There you have it, 10 actors who have played multiple Marvel characters. Which one is your favorite? Any good ones we missed? Let us know in the comment section down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more from TheBinger.